Hi, I'm Mia Parrish with Devils in the Details, and today I'm talking with really fascinating colleagues from the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts. Everybody's wondering, as we've pivoted to virtual learning, how do you do things like performing arts in a virtual environment? How do you teach that? And these four colleagues have done some really interesting and amazing things, and I'm excited to talk to them about it today. Chris, why don't you kick us off with what changes did you make to your class, your classrooms, virtually or in person for this?
Yeah, so the big class that I teach is an intro to technical theater class, which typically has a lecture portion, then it has a lab portion, which everybody comes together in our shop and we produce scenery, we hang lights, we do all these things in close proximity to put a performance on. But that's not possible. We're doing all of our performances virtual. So I still wanted the students to get those hands-on skills. So what I put together, an example, I made lab kits for all of our students in every single different area. In the rigging kit, they got some like rope and they got a couple terminations, so they get to do something physical with their hands at home. For building scenery, they got a couple pieces of balsa wood and some cardstock, and they're going to build standard flats that we use in theater. They got sewing kits, electrics kits with batteries and light bulbs, so we can talk about how electricity flows and how to wire something together for different types of circuits. So it's about getting things into their hands so they can tactily touch something versus having to do everything on a keyboard and a screen.
Naomi, what do you teach and how have you changed what you do and how you do it?
I teach two classes in the fashion design program. I teach at entry level, so that's a class of freshmen that are coming into fashion design for the first time. And just like Chris was saying, they really want to experience something tactile. So without being able to be in person, they made face masks, kind of obviously inspired by the moment, and they did it based on historical research of fashion going back, some did the 90s, some did all the way back to Grecians and Egyptians, and they're just beautiful kind of avant-garde creations, inspired by what we're going through, but still looking back at everything we've been through.
Kathy, how about you? What do you teach and what have you been doing this semester?
We are teaching people in person, students in person, for Construction 1 and Construction 2. We were able to reconfigure our very large classroom to make it safe enough for them to use the industrial equipment that we think is very important for them to learn for the fashion industry. And we usually have maybe 20 people in our large studio, and we were able to get it up to 18, and they feel very safe and come to class. It just isn't the same. They'd rather be together and share and see what each other's doing and learn the equipment correctly.
Lauren, you have a really interesting role and the kind of work you do. So share what you teach and how you've come up with the changes.
So the most interesting class this semester I'm teaching is called Improvising Cyborgs, which asks students to find ways to collaborate and communicate and improvise across disciplines. So even though, as you can see, my background's in sound and music, I have students who are interested in dance, photography, visual arts, games, and music. And it's a very performative based class. So it's been quite a challenge to teach virtually this semester. But yeah, I got together with our incredible technical team in Arts, Media and Engineering, and we put together various technological kits that the students could collect. Not all students are actually able to come to campus, so I had to be really flexible in my approach to that, but we had things like little magnetic modular synthesizers, which are like this incredible way to learn how to make music with electronics. We had some DIY synthesizers. That's a lesson that I teach that gets you making sound and improvising with technology really rapidly, and various other things. So it's been very experimental. This is one of the courses that I actually use as a case study for my research on pedagogy as well. So having to teach this remotely has been very interesting. Actually things like using breakout rooms in Zoom where students get to sort of work a little bit on their own, and it's sort of their own kind of quiet, private space in groups, has actually been really successful for this. And I also ask them to find objects in their home that they can improvise with. So we've had all kinds of weird and wonderful things appear in the improvisations. And also I get to improvise with the students from my setup in my room, which, you know, I've had to live stream my performances since March. So that's been a real kind of bonus.
Naomi, how about you? How have your students adapted and what things have been more successful for you?
Well, it's really just a change in approach to everything. In my other class where we focus on personal style, one of the key components is kind of assessing your skin tones and your hair and finding the colors that really bring you out. That's something that we usually do in person, you know, with fabric swatches. So in kind of taking to Zoom, I made backgrounds to give that color experience. And it was a success and a fail, because if you can't apply a virtual background, then sometimes their entire face would be autumn toned instead of the background. But when it did work, it was fantastic for those that, you know, when we could make it function. And then they created their own Zoom backgrounds that really made them look so fantastic.
Chris, what does that look like for you? I mean, you work with creative people, all of you do. And how has that fed into that creative spirit, innovative spirit fed into how you've been teaching?
Yeah, so beyond the classroom, we do shows. We're doing virtual shows, and we've had to problem solve how to do a virtual show and break the concept of the Zoom box, not having each performer in a box. So we've devised a way through our staff and faculty and students have worked to send phones to everybody's house, and then their phones are capturing their video on a green screen, which is coming back to a central server, and then it's breaking. And then we made a set that was 3D scanned and put into the virtual environment, and then we're placing each of the performers on the set in the virtual environment, in the space. So our students and our staff have been working really, really close together with the faculty to figure out how to even do this. It's a brand new thing that none of us have ever touched. And students are like, well, how does this process work? And it's like, we don't know how the process works. We're all discovering together, and we're all learning together. None of us have all the answers.
Lauren, for you, are there, what changes do you think will be permanent?
You know, there's some things that are quite established in my field, such as telematic performance. This is, I guess, this idea of being able to, you know, play with people on different continents, in different places, and do so in such a way that the music, you know, makes sense, dealing with things like latency and delay. And it's only been sort of, you know, available when you have high-speed internet. So I guess when I'm teaching improvisation, we're looking at ways to sort of navigate that.
Kathy, how about you? You know, how have people adapted, and what's your source of inspiration?
I was watching a lot of news, of course, when this all started happening, and I watched, in particular, stories set from Europe and what Europe was doing. I think Denmark had a good handle on the pandemic right from the beginning. So I watched a show about how they were going to reopen their schools and how they were going to set up their little classrooms. So I was inspired by that and trying to keep the students in what we're calling pods. So we have 3 students per table, and they don't have to move around the room. They just go to their pod, and their equipment is there. And I come to the side of the table that is sort of neutral, and I visit each student. So our contact is very limited during class time. And I also created over the summer almost 40 videos showing each of them how to do their sample.
Naomi, how about you? I mean, how the adaptations affected you and changed you as a teacher going forward?
What I hope is that this integration of using Zoom will continue, because it's kind of giving us an ability to reach students all over the world. So I have 2 students right now, one that's still in China and one that's in Brazil, and they never miss class and they're just as engaged. And they, you know, how many more students can we reach through our programs and our innovation all over without being limited by having to be local?
I just want to thank all of you, Naomi, Chris, Kathy, Lauren, for joining me on Devils in the Details today. I'm inspired by your creativity and inspired by your resilience.
Thank you so much for having us.